Mr. President, as I look around this chamber, I see men and women of remarkable talents and abilities. But I also have a strong sense, we all do, that there is a tremendous void now in our midst. A very special senator, a very special friend, a member who played a unique role within this body for nearly a half a century, is no longer with us. We've heard many glowing and richly earned tributes to Senator Ted Kennedy over the last couple of weeks. He was not only the most accomplished and effective senator of the last 50 years, he was truly one of the towering figures in the entire history of the United States Senate. Yet for all his accomplishments, for all the historic bills that he authored and shepherded into law, for all the titanic battles he fought, I will remember Ted Kennedy first and foremost as just a good and decent human being. I remember his extraordinary generosity, his courage, his passion, his capacity for friendship and caring, and of course that great sense of humor. I remember one time I was in my office and we had a phone conversation, and it was about a disagreement we had. And it was right at St. Patrick's Day. And so we were having this discussion on the phone, and tempers got a little heated. I think I was holding the phone out about like this. He probably was too. And I think our voices got raised to a very high decibel level, and sort of yelling at each other. And pretty soon we just hung up on each other. Well, I felt very badly about this. I know he did too. So several hours later, I came on the floor. I saw Ted at his desk. And I went up to him and I pulled up the chair next to him, and he had that kind of pixie smile on his face and that little twinkle in his eye. And I said, "Say, Ted," I said, "Gee, I'm really sorry about that conversation we had. I said I shouldn't have lost my temper like I did." And he yelled. I said, my staff is a little concerned about our relationship. And he sort of got that great smile and he chuckled. He said, "Forget about it." He said, "I just told my staff that's just the way two Irishmen celebrate St. Patrick's Day." That's just the way he was. I mean, he could disarm you immediately, and you move on. He had a great disarming sense of humor. Ted came from a remarkable family. So many tough breaks, so many triumphs, so many contributions to our nation, both in war and in peace. Ted and his siblings were born to great wealth. They could have lived lives of luxury and leisure, but they chose instead to devote themselves to public service. They devoted themselves to making the world a better place for others, especially those in the shadows of life. And there are so many things I could focus on this morning in my brief remarks, but I want to focus on just one aspect of Ted Kennedy, and that is all that he did to improve the lives of people with disabilities in our country. And I thought about this with the death of Eunice Kennedy Shriver on August 11th, and all she did to found the Special Olympics, now being carried on by her son Tim, and then the death of Ted on August 25th. People with disabilities in this country lost two great champions. Their sister Rosemary lived her entire life with a severe intellectual disability. The entire Kennedy family is well acquainted with the joys and struggles of those with disabilities. And those of us who were in the church in Boston at the funeral, and those probably watching on television, heard the very eloquent speech by Teddy Jr. and his battle with cancer at a young age and losing his leg, and his confronting his disabilities and how Ted helped him get through that. In 1975, Senator Kennedy helped to pass what's now called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. In 1978, he passed legislation expanding the jurisdiction of the Civil Rights Commission to protect people from discrimination on the basis of disability. In 1980, he introduced the Civil Rights for Institutionalized Persons Act, protecting the rights of people in government institutions, including the elderly and people with intellectual and mental disabilities. And 19 years ago, he was one of my most important leaders and partners in passing the Americans with Disabilities Act, 1990. I'll never forget that after I'd been in the Senate for 2 years, the Republicans were in charge, and then in 1986, Democrats came back, took charge, and Senator Kennedy wanted me on his Education and Health Committee. Well, I sort of played a little hard to get. I said, well, maybe, but, I said, I'm really interested in disability issues. He knew about that. He knew about my work on some of the stuff I'd done in the House before I came here, especially on people with hearing problems. And I said I'd like to come on his committee, but I said I'd be interested in, working on disability issues. And he got back to me. He said, I'll tell you what, he said, I've got the Disability Policy Subcommittee, and you can chair it. I'm a freshman senator. He didn't have to do that for me. I was astounded at this great generosity. And so I've always appreciated that. Now, he'd already had this great extensive record on disability issues, yet he let me take the lead. And then when the Americans with Disabilities Act came up, again, he could have taken that himself. He was the chairman of the committee. As I said, he had this long history of championing the causes of people with disabilities. And yet he knew how passionately I felt about it. And he let me author the bill. He let me take it on the floor. He let me be the floor manager of it and put my name on it. He didn't have to do that. He was the chairman. He could have had his name on it. He could have floor managed it. But he let me do it, in spite of the fact that I was just a freshman senator. And he was just an indispensable leader in bringing disparate groups together to get the Americans with Disabilities Act passed. And I will never forget that great act of generosity on his part and letting me take the lead on it. Ted always insisted that our focus should be not on disability, but on ability, that people with disabilities must be fully included in our American family. So Americans with disabilities had no better friend, no tougher fighter, no more relentless champion than Ted Kennedy. Yesterday, Mr. Chairman, I accepted the chairmanship of the Senate HELP Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. It is a great honor and a great challenge, and I must add, somewhat daunting, to carry on the legacy of Senator Ted Kennedy. He dedicated his life to making our economy work for all Americans, to secure a quality education for every child, and of course, securing quality, affordable health care for every citizen as a right, not a privilege. In the Democratic cloakroom, there is a page from the Cape Cod Times, a wonderful picture of Ted, and a quote from him. And here's the quote. "Since I was a boy, I have known the joy of sailing the waters of Cape Cod. And for all my years in public life, I have believed that America must sail toward the shores of liberty and justice for all. There is no end to that journey, only the next great voyage." Well, Mr. President, we've heard many eloquent tributes to Senator Kennedy, but the tribute that would matter most to him would be for his colleagues to come together on a bipartisan basis to pass a strong, comprehensive health reform bill this year. It is time for us to sail ahead on this next great voyage to a better and more just and more caring America. So as we sadly contemplate the empty desk draped in black, we say farewell to a beloved colleague. He's no longer with us, but his work continues. His spirit is here. And as he said, the cause endures. May Ted Kennedy rest in peace. But may we not rest until we have completed the cause of his life, the cause he fought for until his last breath, ensuring quality, affordable health care for every American. Mr. President, I yield the floor.